And now here's Tony.
The token Brit.
Except
Um,
Paul said he was coming, so
sorry,
Paul said he was coming,
did
so
he?
maybe it won't
Oh,
be long.
okay. Okay. All right. Well, that would be great. Two of us then. Um, okay, so the background to this really is since last July, I've been working 2.5 days a week on a project, government-funded project, in what is called the North Wessex Downs National Landscape. And this is a big area in southern England that is mostly chalk landscape, very agricultural. And it's a national landscape because it's recognized as having a distinctive character that they feel is worth protecting. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with farming subsidy system in the UK, possibly not. Okay.
Not thoroughly.
Um,
Sure.
well, I suppose we inherited this, what's called the basic payment scheme from when we were part of the European Union. And basically farmers were getting paid for the land they owned. Literally, they didn't have to do anything particularly. They just got paid for having agricultural land. That changed a few years ago with Brexit. And what we now have a scheme, which I think actually is a lot better in many ways, is a kind of what they call various names for it, but sustainable farming incentive. So basically, it is paying farmers for doing its public money for public goods. So the principle there is that if the farmer is doing something that is good for nature or for carbon sequestration, flood control, various things like that, they will receive a certain payment per hectare of area. And the more, if you like, wildlife friendly or whatever you want to term it, it gets, then you get more and more payment. So it's effectively trying to offset any costs incurred for farmers not absolutely maxing out on their land. So with that sort of background, the as you may know, I don't know, UK is one of the most biodiverse, depleted countries in the world. And so as a consequence of that, the government has made a commitment to a thing called 30 by 30, which is trying to create nature recovery in 30% of the country of England. This is by 2030, which I think is a bit of a stretch. Um, so there's been quite a focus on national landscapes such as mine, which there are a number around the country, because these are more protected landscapes and perhaps less urbanized. So the particular scheme that I'm involved with is called Species Survival Fund, and it's very, very specific lump of money in a very short program. It's on our particular program. It's as I said, I think in the email, it comes from DEFRA, which is the farming government agency, and they pay for it's effectively a year and a half of this program, and the all the funding ends at the end of this year. So we're coming close to the end of the program. And the idea is it's for habitat creation or restoration of sensitive habitats within the area we've designated. So my particular project, I don't know whether I've got a little couple of pictures that might be helpful. I don't know if people will be, can I
Sure.
share?
You should be able to.
Yep. Okay, where are we going? Here we go. This is a presentation I cobbled from, this is just stolen from other things I've done. So I'll rattle through these because this is not really about a presentation, but you can see this is the area. So on the right-hand side, London is about sort of 40 miles away. Bath is about 30 miles away on the west or the left-hand side. We got 7 sites. It's quite a complex project, but we've got 7 sites: river restoration, chalk grassland restoration, heathland restoration, wood pasture. We've got wetland creation, and that's pretty much and spread around 7 sites. Now, just to give you an idea, this one here, chalk stream, very, very rare habitat around the world. And we're realigning rivers that were then straightened and messed around with in previous times to try and maximize the farming area. Wetland creation, heathland creation there, and wood pasture, arable. We are engaging a little bit with farmers on this, with limited extent around arable, and regenerative elements of regenerative farming. Dealing with ash dieback here, and then chalk grassland. So that's kind of a little bit of, let me unshare then. That's a little bit of the background to that, what I'm actually doing. Now, I suppose really what the conversation I'm keen to have is, how do we relate what I'm doing here with the 4 paradigms, which have really taken my interest since I first came across them. Carroll's 4 paradigms, you know, the modern paradigms of extraction, arrest disorder, do good, and regenerate. And it seems to me there's an awful lot of, so I'll stop sharing. Seems to me the project I'm working on is, by its nature, is very controlling. It's very, very focused on just create more good stuff, and we'll find out what happens. You know, there is, the partner is supposed to maintain the site for 10 years in that condition, but for no money. And we're supposed to be monitoring what happens to the site for 5 years with very little money. So I think in reality, I don't think there's a great expectation about what the outcomes or outputs will be from this, apart from just having done the work. And it's almost fingers crossed. So it reminds me very much of the sort of, I think it's very much a political program, as I suspect a lot are. Possibly, I don't know in the States whether you get these sorts of programs happening, but
no, we're totally apolitical over here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I expect farming is rather different business. Well, I don't know. I mean, Midwest is probably very different from where a lot of you guys are in the sort of eastern seaboard. But so yeah, what I'm trying to get around to, I suppose, is this is a kind of an example of where I suppose I would say at the very best we're trying to do good, in that we're trying to create or restore habitat which is aligned with certain species which are in decline or very rare and need some sort of support. But I think it's also it's a combination of a lot of these paradigms, because I think the other one is the extracting. We're just taking from the land and doing this thing, you know, and we're not expecting the outputs there. It's what I'm trying to say. We're taking from the land something without really knowing what it is what the end result is going to be. How is it going to evolve? How is it going to develop? You know, what is it really doing for the place? We're just relining a bit of river, and we think we're in the hands of experts here, in the sense that we assume they know what is best for the place. But is it beyond doing good, or is it really regenerating the habitat, or is it just a sort of short-term political thing, which is about meeting certain targets that are set at a completely different level, irrespective of what actually happens on the ground?
So Tony, I have a question for you. So
Yeah.
what do you think is the motivation behind this work? Where is that coming from, right?
From whom?
From whoever the funding or the
Mhm.
people, and it's not, these kind of programs aren't just the people who funded it, they're the people who lobbied for it, the people that, right, promoted this to get
Mm.
funded, right? So, and then obviously the people in government who then provided the funds. So the one thing I heard you say about, England being one of the most biodiversity depleted places in the world. Um, so I'm just curious about, yeah, where the motivation comes from behind it,
Mm.
because I think that has a lot to do with like what paradigm is it coming from?
Mm. Mm. Okay. Well, it's difficult to unpick that in a way, where it really,
Yeah.
really originates. But I think um, it's certainly a political decision, and it's enshrined in law to make this 30 by 30. So, um, it's something that is legally required. Although, as we
There
know, a lot
is
of these
there
things
is
don't.
some sort, and I forget what it is exactly. I think it came out of one of the biodiversity cops that there is
Mm.
an international agreement for countries to do the 30 by 30.
Right.
Of course, the US is totally ignoring that. But I just actually read an article recently. There's 100 countries in the world that have already achieved it. Now, obviously, they
Mm.
already had a bunch of land set aside.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
yeah.
It probably does originate in that international sort of scenario, but we've had a lot of NGOs in this country, campaigning around that. We have Natural England, we have all sorts of agencies who and wildlife trusts. Each county has a wildlife trust um,
Hmm.
who do a whole range of projects, but they've all been
Nice.
lobbying around this nature depletion. Um, and then, of course, on the other side, we do have the farming lobby, some of which there are groups within the farming lobby who do appreciate the benefits of nature recovery, not just for itself, but actually for the improvement in soil health and what biodiversity can bring to actually the health of the plants and the land itself. So there's a whole range of different, I think, people who've been supporting that international move.
The
Um,
other, as you're speaking there, the other thing that's coming up for me is there's usually a belief or set of beliefs behind the motivation too,
hmm.
and trying to understand what that is, right?
Well,
Trying to get
yeah,
at the core of why this is being done, I guess. Yeah.
hmm.
Other
I
than, oh,
sus
it's a law, or okay, well, why is it a law? And right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. The why,
trying to
why,
unpack
why, the
that.
5 layers of why.
Right.
yeah. Well, I suspect that actually in some sense, there's a kind of deep-seated guilt
Mm.
about what we've actually been doing to the countryside because I mean, there's so much mythology and uh, embedded within the English and certainly British psyche around the countryside, and you know how it's a
Mm.
rural idyll and
Right.
all these sorts of things. Yeah, and our tourist boards, very happily promote this view. Um, but
And then destroy it
yeah, yeah,
when there's
and I
too
just
many.
look around and the thing is, it's all the force. I mean, a lot of the destruction is really um, economic forces operating. I think a lot of farmers don't would rather it not have been that way. But we were paying them to take out hedges and dig up,
Mhm.
drain land and all sorts of things, and now they're putting
Right.
it back. So it's bizarre. But I think also there's something I want to put in the pot here is about the conservationists themselves, because I think there's a very certainly has been, and people like George Monbiot have criticised the conservation lobby around how they focus on one species in one little area,
Mhm.
and create a kind of an
Yeah.
oasis or an island of goodness, and then ignore how it interacts or interrelates with the greater whole, as it were, the wider context. So I think there's a shift that needs mentality that needs to shift at that level as well. You know,
Yeah.
oh, we don't how we're losing this particular species. Well, okay, so what does that really mean, and how does that fit? Why favor that over another, and how does that fit within, how
There's
we should be looking, caring for the land as a whole?
there's clearly an arrest disorder paradigm playing out in this, right? So if it's one of the least biodiverse places on Earth, well, let's make it a little more biodiverse, right? So that's a let's do right, less bad kind of
Yeah.
a scenario that's clearly at play. And there may be more than that, but that part is clearly at play, I think.
I'm conscious we got a few hands up here.
Yep.
So Jody, then Aline, and
Yeah,
then
I've got a
Miguel.
couple things that have been
Hmm.
coming up for me. I really appreciate Marcus asking about the why, but what I heard in your conversation, Tony, is two things struck me. One, that you also expressed that there's a distrust of these experts coming in and saying this is the right thing to do. So I wanted to unpack the potential distrust a little bit. And then the other thing is, it sounds like the process, and maybe this ties to distrust, it doesn't sound like there was a lot of transparency about how these initiatives were um, decided upon. Like if there wasn't a discovery of place or an assessment of community relations at a level that was visible to to you or to other community members. So those are the two things that are coming up for me.
Hmm.
Any
Okay.
reflection on those?
Yeah. Um, I'll tell you what, can we go to Aline as well, and then maybe see if there's sort of themes coming up through this? Because
Okay.
yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I think my question is somewhat in the story of place kind of area, because it was more of a clarifying question around what are the species or the system that is hoped to be restored. Like if you if you look at archaeology, you go back to at a point this area was rich off. I just wonder if there's a specific set of systems or one. It's interesting. This is how WWF got such a push, because they knew they needed a hero species and they chose the panda, and then they got a lot of, it's sometimes it can be a good tool for marketing and communication, and also it can completely skew the whole thinking about it. So I was more thinking like, what's the just looking for like more clarity around like what are the things that are being restored, conserved, or regenerated in terms of more specific species.
Hmm. I think in some cases it's around certain species, in some cases around certain habitats that have certain species that are associated with it. Which is why they're kind of in weirdly, perhaps almost leaving us, although it's a species survival fund, it's actually, they almost kind of seem to be leaving it up to us. And I wasn't involved right at the start of this, so I may have missed something, but um, there are no sort of specific, even in the objectives of the program, there are no particular species identified that we're looking to improve the numbers of. I mean, we are having to undertake some monitoring long term around certain ones, but it's up to us to agree what those would be and what would be, are they indicator species or are they just rare species? Those sorts of things. So it's all very, I mean, the impression I get is the whole thing has been rushed through. Um, and the last thing you can do with kind of habitat is, and these sort of level of natural systems is rush things through.
Yeah.
Although sometimes recovery can be quite quick. Um, and yeah, so apparently I think it was advised, there were some advice from English Nature, which is the kind of government authority around species and habitat. So I think there was some input around that. But I mean, there's trying to sort of address the wider issues there. I mean, there's one interesting conflict The heathland restoration we're doing, it was originally common land, which is basically means that certain people lived there, had rights to graze and collect wood from what was heathland. It was poor quality land, and it was heather and open. And then after the Second World War, it was neglected, and it's regenerated, sorry to use that word, in a nature context of birch woodland, so pioneer species are coming back, and it's now quite dense woodland. And we're actually removing a lot of those trees for the heathland to recover. So some people kind of said, well, hang on, what about the carbon sequestration going on here? You're taking up, people are planting trees down the road or something, and now we're taking trees up here. So, this is kind of like a really interesting sort of conundrum around what's a priority here. And I think because of the program is about just the habitat, we weren't thinking in the wider context of what it really means to do, and how do you sustain this over a long time if the only value it has to the landowner is a pot of money to do the capital works. What does that really mean in the longer term, after 10 years or so? Are they then going to just kind of plow it up or do something different because they're beyond outside of the scope of the agreement? It's kind of it seems to be pointing to just meeting a target, a political target in the end. It's not what I would think true restoration or regeneration. But Miguel, you've had your hand up too.
Yeah, you brought up George Monbiot. I did read his book, and I also read Paul Hawkins. There is some fragmentation. So Paul calls for the transformation of the food industry into some sort of Soylent Green thing where we're feeding off non-animal proteins in a way bioengineered. So and he goes against what the Savory Institute is doing on regenerative farming, because he's saying that that the metrics are cooked and that the process is really not delivering the results that they claim that it delivers. So going back to how can we validate the outcomes in function of tracking what the project was intended. So there was a potential, hopefully validated through a story of place thing, but how do we validate that that potential was in fact transmutated into a project that delivers what we were expecting that it delivers? So we could say, there's qualitative and quantitative. So you can say, the ability of the soil to absorb more water. You can say, a random counting of species, of all species within a certain geographical area that it has improved biodiversity. Or you can say you can do the spectrometry of whatever food that is produced in that place and see what are the different nutrients that are available and present in that. That's another way. But in the end, the open question to you is, how could we look at that, let's call it somewhat scientific process of seeing if we did or did not hit the target?
Well, yeah, there are some of the monitoring we will be doing will help to contribute to that. But I mean, the bizarre thing is, yeah, I would imagine they should have been having a baseline survey undertaken right at the start of the project. You know, baseline survey is doing a whole analysis of a place, you know, what's here and what's, you know, things like soil or whatever species. So you can compare before and after. And they didn't even require that. So it's kind of really, really very strange. So it's not even seeming to follow sort of sensible protocol here. So it's probably not a great example in the end, but I thought it was an interesting one just to sort of prompt the discussion, as it were. But yeah, I mean, some of the surveys we're doing, there's going to be soil analysis, there's going to be plant monitoring, there's going to be butterfly transects. So we actually have a whole army of volunteers who will be going out and doing various sorts of surveys. But you know, whether they really indicate is that what we've done is really good. You know, is it really regenerating the place? Is it helping the place to sort of even evolve and develop rather than, you know, some of this is about kind of restoration rather than, you know, the Heathland project is taking it back to what it was rather than saying, well, what does it need to be? You know, what's apart from sort of, you know, trying to provide habitat for certain species that they sort of think might come along with it. But yeah, so the whole range of questions around that monitoring. So I'm not sure I have an answer particularly, but
Well, so when we talk about the proximate hole of the project, so if we did baseline approximate hole, then we can see, so are participants from the proximate hole contributing and interacting and engaging with the project? And has there been an improvement, so an added value to the species that inhabit that proximate hole? So is there more bird species and other things that are now have the opportunity to interact, and you have migrational species and other things that can be then observed on that proximate hole?
Mm. Mm. I think the short answer is no, but I think it's complex in the sense that the habitats we're working on, and there's very prescribed areas, are being undertaken by, first of all, some of the people undertaking the work are quite experienced and do other work in the area. So, for instance, one of them is a wildlife trust. So they have various reserves around. So they've got a pretty good idea of what is happening in the area and how that might interact. But that's not explicit in the project. And because of the adjacency of some of these sites, for instance, the river restoration bit, we're just doing a particular stretch of the river. They're hoping to carry on further down, but if the funding isn't there, then we've just done a bit of the stretch of the river. Now, that might help with, you know, some of the salmon, the trout and various river fly and sort of things that we've tried to create the habitat for by diversifying the profile and the flow of the river itself. But you know, it's in isolation. It's not. I think there's an aim to try and link it up with other parts, but it could just end up being, you know, a well looked after part, and the remainder of it could be just terrible. So it's and there's been no real engagement with other partners around or land neighbours or anything like that. I think the thing is, part of the problem is the program was so quick. Even putting together the budget and the program things was very, very hurried. So again, it points to, you know, an ill-considered sort of real way of a lack of real commitment, I think, to the apparent aims of the project. Helen.
Yeah, well, I was going to make one comment, but now I want to make two comments. One is I feel like something that is missing here is the participation of the people who are going to be involved long term. And if you don't have people who are seeing the potential of this, then it's just going to be a project that's done and ignored. And so I think that there's a big missing there potentially. I don't know. Maybe there's a different view. And so when you're thinking about the levels of paradigm, there's no way to get to the probably not even let's see, we're studying extract value, arrest disorder, do good, who's going to do good, who's, and then getting to regenerative paradigm, that you would need to have all of those elements, the people and the work that's happening, and the work that's going to be happening should be something, I think, that people have talked about the story of place and understanding the place. It should start there, but those people need to be part of that, I think, in order to have this become something that can be truly regenerative and ongoingly developmental. And maybe that's like a North Star, is thinking ongoingly developmental. How do we get there? And so it doesn't sound like that is something that's even been considered, but maybe it has.
Okay, yeah, well, thank you. That's a great point, and something I haven't really, I suppose, talked about. I mean, a lot of in a way, the people have come forward to become the partners in this project, came forward because they wanted to be part of it. So I think it's fair to say that quite a lot of them are keen. It's interesting. The river restoration one is part of a very big international company that owns hotels and things all over, but they happen to own this long stretch of the river, which is they use for fishing, private fishing. But actually, the land agent there is, I think, become really excited by what's going on there, and I think so. He's actually changed in his, I suppose, understanding and attitude to it. And I think, yeah, so some of the others already are on board, as it were, are keen on the nature restoration thing. I think part of the problem is that it's the process is not really enabling others to engage. So the driving partners of this, the landowners, are there because they want to be there, and they're willing partners, but it's yeah, those outside, yeah, the greater whole is not really being engaged with at all.
So the other part of what I wanted to bring up was just thinking about this conversation that we're all having, what is your goal? What would you like to see come out of this conversation?
Well, I'd love to, should another program like this come along, I would be really, really value a greater understanding of perhaps of where this kind of work should be framed. It might be impossible, I don't know, because if these edicts come from on high, but certainly you have an opportunity to feed back. At the end of this process, we do have someone who's a professional evaluator who is, trying to collect outcomes from this, even given the tight constraints. So I think the reflection process, I'd very much like to be able to try and present some of this points we're sort of making here, to hopefully influence any future programs. Because it seems to me it's so siloed, it's very just doing this bit here. The potential it could be much greater. But I think that's always part of the problems of these government programs. They don't talk to each other. The departments don't talk to each other. They don't, and if they do, they say, like for instance, the health benefits of some of these things. Okay, going out into nature and having mental health benefits coming out of this access to there and connecting with these species and improved habitat. That who benefits? If there's an economic benefit, if there's can add put an economic benefit to it, it probably comes from the health department, but they don't. Excuse me, sorry, that's the job. They would they actually contribute towards this program? Would they see health benefits? We can put some sort of economic value onto that, and therefore we can contribute to it. I mean, that's to me is always a big problem around all these government programs. They're just not joined up.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lack of leadership and a lack of I mean, there's some vision there, but the vision is very constrained, and so I don't hear anybody leading this in any way.
Mm.
And if there was somebody leading it, they might not be leading it the way we hope they would anyway. But that said, it just who is leading it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and also the minister who announced it is no longer there. So, and in fact, quite a few of the department, people who are in there and set up the project are no longer there. So it's that how do you embed that continuity into this? So yeah, Jody, sorry.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to. You mentioned gaining information for the next time something like this comes up, but I think that there's still opportunities within this time. And so my comment is, you had mentioned there's a 10-year kind of assessment, and the money is very weak to make that happen. I think that maybe well, I'll ask the question, is there a way that you think that could be turned into citizens, and that the objectives of allowing nature to evolve in the way nature says is right could be part of the parameters for that citizen-based science work? And then I think a ton would be learned from discrete, uninformed interventions and how they can actually spur nature to take a stand in the way that she needs to take it. And I think that
Mm.
opportunity might still be there for these projects, which is kind of exciting. It's a little bit of the problem solver in me getting in the way, but it's also looking at there's a goal that nature wants to be regenerated, and we want to support that work. And the constraint is this was a stupid project that happened very fast with very limited transparency and very limited discovery. And now what can happen from that information, and how can the resolution of this, the reconciliation, be beneficial?
Mm.
And that could be an aspect. I don't know if what your role is. You said you have really an admin role, but if that admin role is also to help set the parameters of the next 10 years, even implanting some of those notions of evolution of systems could be incredibly impactful.
Mm. Well, I say I won't be around on this project from next May because my funding stops. So who knows if I'll be around or not? But yeah, there is an yeah, thank you. There is an opportunity in the evaluation process that is going on underway to try and identify that potential. I think as I said, I think earlier, there's quite a lot of volunteers involved around who seem very happy. I mean, I don't know what's like in the States, but there seem to be more volunteers than work sometimes on some of these projects. I think, there's a real appetite for people, perhaps, maybe people who are retired particularly, but, have time on their hands, who really want to get out and be in nature and work together. So I think maybe that is a kind of unintended benefit from this project. Yeah, it's not central to what they're doing, but I think it's perhaps it's one of the lasting legacies of that is that people do get together and do these things, and in a perhaps a slightly creative way.
Sounds like indirect work.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? The direct work is the steam, the machines coming in and all that kind of stuff, right? It's the restoration.
Yeah, yeah. And it's I mean it's in a sense it's quite because the money isn't there. It's it does rely on that sort of ingenuity and creative ways of trying to keep the thing going. I mean, some
Yeah,
of them are,
money is often a restrictor as much as an enabler.
yeah. I mean, fortunately, some of the organisations who are involved, the partners there, do have an ongoing arrangement. Like, for instance, Wildlife Trust, they have a regular group of people, volunteers and stuff. So it kind of fits within their model, as it were, of how they work and operate. And but that still has the similar benefits of community creation and individual health improvement, those sorts of things. In terms of the actual partners, the landowners themselves, I think it'd be interesting to see how that really impacts them. As I said, I think some of them are already on board. We got one farmer, for instance, who's really keen on butterflies and things like that. But he goes around doing all sorts of things. But then he's still conventional. He still sprays. He still puts fertilizer on his land. So it's a kind of weird combination. But hopefully, maybe he'll begin to see there's the changes in his land as a result of the work. Will actually perhaps encourage him to adopt different practices in the future. But publicizing as well is the other thing to it, is making letting others know what's been done, and so they can see for themselves. Marianne.
Yeah, as some other people have already said, I'm thinking about where the leverage point is now, the systemic leverage point is now. Because you seem to be convincing. I think you already had the opinion this is not regenerative before you came on the call from everything you said.
Surprise.
It's interesting that Marcus mentioned indirect work, because I'm actually rereading it right now.
Mhm.
Open to this page I was reading this morning, because I'm wondering if that sort of evaluation feedback could offer an opportunity for education of the leadership in this. So we look to the moral and honorable people among us for leadership. We recognize their agency, that they have willingly taken up responsibility as stewards for the world they find themselves in. But they are hindered in their ability to do this work by a failure to understand living processes and the way change happens in human systems. I would say systems in general. So, thinking about what who you are and what and maybe also just sitting in with Marcus about like how do we translate in some way to various audiences a simple way to understand living systems and how they could apply it more. I don't know, I guess I see sort of in the evaluation feedback process, could there be like an educational aspect to that might start to bring together those silos in some way that they could see the interconnectedness. And then I guess also with what people are saying from on the ground, like community development, is there an educational way in which you start to spur or inspire community engagement that is ongoing with something that just it reveals some potential that some community members could continue onward with. So, I mean, considering you're at the point now where this is kind of, coming to an end and your role in it is coming to an end, it seems like those two seem to have like a place for you to potentially do some education work in terms of living systems that gets people, that might create something that has an aha moment for the people involved.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good point. There's we had hoped that having together, we have all the partners come together from time to time as to share their experiences and to share information. And I think that's been kind of interesting in that they get along, but they're very different sort of projects. And I think different types of ownership, different sorts of governance, and those. And I think to be fair, I think probably need for them to cohere as a group, I think is perhaps unlikely. So I think we're the glue, as it were.
I don't think they're going to cohere. I think I'm thinking more at the governmental level, like the people who really first ill-conceived or only partially conceived.
Yeah, okay.
I guess
all the stakeholders, right? It should be all the stakeholders coming together, right?
But I mean, that's where you might, it seems like from the way it's, I mean, I have to say I have a bias against the whole 30 by 2030 approach to anything, because I've seen that be so destructive in the renewable energy space. So even that thinking kind of, I think, even that sort of thinking is like, okay, 30% of what, right? Like exactly what? And I think that created the sort of disparate like grabs of like who can we get and who can we do this with, right? That's yeah. Anyway, so I guess I'm thinking higher than the people involved, but like, is there, like you said, that minister is gone now, but I wonder if there's still people in those departments or ministries that you could get an interested ear.
Well, I'll certainly try. They're kind of a bit hands off in a way. It's kind of remote. But I think certainly, I really want to use this as a way for us, an organisation, the North Wessex Downs National Landscape. We're a very small team of people, but we cover, we engage with different aspects of the whole area, mostly around agricultural use in some way or other. So I'm really looking forward to this having hopefully a really good open discussion around purpose, particularly around why are we there, what do we do, what can we do, given the resources we have, are we going to be enablers, facilitators of, what's already out there and help to them to see the sort of potential and the systems they're operating in.
And what they're seeking to emerge, right? So
sorry,
what they're seeking to emerge, so that there's a sense of connecting their purpose to the place's purpose.
Yeah. It's
why I was trying to get at motivation earlier, right? What is it that they're caring about?
Yeah. And I think it is. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I'm still learning a bit about the place. I mean, I've been through a very steep learning curve in terms of the processes. I have government agencies, I have county agencies. So all of this kind of, and how the money is accounted for and all that. So that's occupied quite a lot of my energy. And I'm just feeling now I'm coming to the end of the program, that actually I have a bit more space around, how to think on the sort of the bigger picture, as it were, rather than just on transactional arrangements. But I mean, I really sort of, I know we don't have much time left there, but I mean, I'd love to sort of explore a bit more about this idea, generally nature restoration, regeneration, rewilding. I mean, there's a lot of controversy and debate around really what that is. Is that, and it seems to me you've got, I don't know, you've got people who talk about rewilding, which is kind of like just leave things alone and nature will do its job. And you've got others who are saying actually human intervention in natural systems can actually help those realize even more potential. I mean, I'm thinking perhaps of some of the indigenous practices in North America, about intervention there. And I think we have them here in this country around like hedgerows, for instance. Traditional hedgerows, are really, really diverse, rich habitat, which have to be maintained to maintain their richness, as you were. So, I think there's this idea of nature conservation. All these questions come together in a way that we have 4 minutes to explore.
Maybe another session. I want to go back to the paradigms.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this is related to what you were just bringing in there. There's clearly elements of arrest disorder in this, right? And I think there's some elements of do good, right? Trying to improve habitat, trying to enhance life, right? So there's an effort to that. So, and again, we only have a couple minutes, and I'm not sure I have enough time to unpack this, and I haven't fully unpacked it myself, but I actually believe there's another paradigm between do good and regenerate life.
Okay.
And this is the way that I view this framework is it's a series of interim states, right? So you're trying to transition from extract value to regenerate. And what happens in between are these stages of interim states. And there's a huge leap from do good to regenerate, right? And I think there's a step in between. And the work that we do, I think, is part of that step. So the one thing that I'm not hearing, and maybe there's already work going on with this, and I think an element of really starting to do good that isn't piecemeal is when you're starting to look at these things systemically, right? Holistically and systemically. And if what this project is a bunch of one-off kind of isolated projects, right? And the follow-up work, I think, does have great potential, right, to evolve this and expand it. But that follow-up work needs to inform large-scale planning, right? And a systematic planning, right? So that if funding comes through again, then you've identified this is the nodal intervention points that you want to focus on in the larger system, right? Not just, oh, I know this guy. He'd be willing to plant some hedgerows or right. And I don't know the degree to which they're thinking systemically. So I think that's an element of really trying to do good and maybe even a little better than do good is you got to bring systemic thinking. And if it's piecemeal parts and pieces, it's definitely not regenerative.
Marcus, I think that should be added into those into those phases because what I've seen them as linear and you just rise to the top, but it doesn't have that connective tissue that allows you to iterate.
Yeah.
So it feels like you have to get to a point where you recognize the iteration is actually vital to achieving regeneration.
Yeah,
I think that's awesome. We should have a whole session on that because that excites me.
It's
really
transcend
directly.
and include, right? It's not
Yeah,
like
yeah. Awesome.
Well, maybe there we go.
Yeah.
Who's going to lead that one?
Marcus.
We need something
Marcus and
concrete to
Jody.
work on.
But I mean, the do good thing, I kind of, does anyone sort of equate it in a similar way? I kind of almost like colonization. I see it in a sense. It's an imposition of an idea,
Can be.
and it may be
It can
well
be.
informed,
It can
But,
be,
you
but
know,
it has larger, it produces larger benefits, I think, or greater benefits
mhm.
at a do good level. But yeah, the impetus behind it um, obviously isn't at the regenerate level.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
any of these can be done very poorly.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, we could do like, yeah, but if you look at them as steps toward being connected, then hopefully that idea of steps toward being connective reduces the danger of colonization,
Mm.
maybe.
No,
Mm.
I think you can definitely do colonization in a do good paradigm, no doubt.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Usually is from the perspective of people doing it, that's exactly what they think they're doing. They think they're
Yeah. Right.
doing good. I mean, that's
Bringing
mission. That's, you know,
bringing civilization to the savages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
bah,
Yeah. Or, yeah, you know, creating one habitat over another.
over another. Bringing a highway in to improve the economics without thinking of any of the people.
So that
That's too good.
That's
yeah.
timely.
The interim step that I see that might be a nodal intervention here and is maybe the right stretch of potential, I don't know, something to explore, is, hey, are we thinking about this systemically instead of
Mhm.
just piecemeal, right? And
Mm.
can we achieve larger effects if we think of
Uh,
it in systemic terms? And that way,
Can
then you
we
bring in
can
the
we support larger impacts instead of
right.
achieve larger? Can we support
Yeah,
larger impacts?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you bring in the carbon sequestration
Yeah.
people and the other right? Because you're looking at the whole system now, not just, the fact that we're trying to have more species show up. That's an important indicator, but it's not the whole story, right?
Mm.
If you're trying to
Yeah.
create healthy ecosystems and human systems. And then, so ultimately for me at the regenerate level is you've got humans that ask the land what it wants and helps intervene in that system to do what the land says that humans should do and play that role. And that's a regenerate level. And I think this systems thinking and this regenerative practice and all that stuff is at this in between do good and regenerate level. The regenerate level is yeah, it's a living systems worldview.
Mm.
That
Mm.
right, none of us have been brought up in that as a cultural tradition.
And then I can come in and help you constellate that, Tony.
There you go.
Okay.
It does, I mean, back to your question about the rewilding, kind of as a, I mean, that is something that would, here at Sirius, we have really asked the land. And we have sections where we were really told, no, this stays wild, right? And there's always, I think, probably like a lot of rewilders say, that there's so much we still don't know, right? So to really have spaces where you let nature kind of do its thing without human impact is just always a really interesting place to have. And to go into the woo-woo for the moment, the fairies love that.
Mm.
I sort of consider that fairyland. And yes, and then there's other places in which we're really working on what is regenerative forest management, and where are there places where what we know, and if we can work with what we know about those living systems, where together we might be able to create something that has some some greater results through that co-creative partnership. So I don't see it as a both and. I do kind of agree that like finding some way to like connect or tune into the place and asking what it's wanting, which is probably hard to say to a British policy people.
Yeah, I'm still trying. Well, hopefully this course that I'm going on, Marcus knows about, will help with
Tony's going to go take the level 1 course that Jen and I did in January.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
honest.
wow.
Yeah.
I just
no,
wanted,
looking forward to. Sorry.
I just wanted to say something before I'm off. I was thinking about the rewilding, and I don't know if I mentioned this before in any of the calls, but in Mauritius, they're actually trying to bring back the dodo, the dodo bird that was, extinct in the
Right.
1800s or something. And I'm like, what's that going to do if you bring the dodo back? I have no idea. I don't understand it at all.
So
Yeah.
are the predators that made the dodo go extinct gone from Mauritius? If not, then I'm not sure what the point
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
The predators were actually the Dutch. They were human
Ah,
eating the dodo.
Too tasty.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like chicken. They said it tasted like chicken.
okay. So
Yeah.
if it's protected, maybe.
Yeah,
Well,
but
that-
I mean,
I don't
the
know.
habitat is totally different. I mean, the habitat has changed.
Hmm.
Will it even be able to
Right.
find its food? What is it going to do? I mean, I don't understand. Yeah.
Well, that raised a really interesting point, the whole idea of evolution. I mean, with climate change
Right.
going on, and there's someone mentioned about not here, but about seed banks. And someone has said actually setting up a seed bank for something in the future is are we going to get? Is that realistic in the sense that if the seeds haven't evolved and they're introduced back into a climate that is very different in the future because they've all disappeared in the wild or whatever, is that going to be, how's that going to work? So, he's
Don't plant them all at once.
yeah.
Of the same
Don't-
species.
Did you say?
Don't plant all the same species all at once. Yeah.
Exactly.
Save some and find out. Yeah.
And actually,
Yeah.
you have to keep updating it, right? You wouldn't
Right.
go like,
Yeah, you
okay,
do.
now we have the bank, doors closed.
Right.
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
I hate to bring politics back in, but it's not really politics. Is Israel bombed the Gaza seed bank?
Oh,
Destroyed
for fuck's sake.
Oh, I heard.
it,
Yes,
for
I
fuck's
heard
sake.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard that on the news the other day. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they know where to hit.
how was the program that you took, Marcus? I guess if you're recommending it, you found it really powerful.
Yeah, we did. It's called Subtle Energies of the Land. It's being offered by an organization called Animate Earth. They are folks that used to be with Schumacher
Oh,
and
wow.
ran some of their programs. And so they're doing their own thing. And the primary guy that's teaching it, his name's Patrick McManaway. He actually lives in Vermont part of the year, and
Oh, maybe I can get him
Um,
here.
yeah, I think he does classes in the States too.
How do
So
you spell his last name again?
Mick Manaway.
Man
No,
away.
Mac. It's
Exactly what
Mac.
it sounds.
Yeah, that's how I
Man
would
away.
man away.
Yeah, he's really I mean, he's got stuff on YouTube as well, which is really
Yeah,
interesting.
he's an interesting guy. He bills himself as the land whisperer. I think he does a lot of work with farmers
Yeah,
around the world, Australia, and he's done a bunch of work. And
he works with
so usually
entities.
they're coming to him because they're having some water problem or animal problem or crop problem or right.
So did he give you kind of a practice that you could
Oh
take
yeah, we did a lot of practice with dowsing rods.
a dowsing?
We were working with dowsing rods and pendulums, and it was all how do you tap into the energies?
Right.
And so yeah, we ran through a whole bunch of exercise playing with energies in different ways.
Did he talk about ley lines?
Yep. Yeah, we actually went outside and used our dowsing rods to play. Try to
Cool.
find some, yeah.
Cool.
And he's totally okay with fairies
Oh yeah,
because he works with entities.
I think he's
of all
half
sorts.
fairy himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm glad to hear he's in Vermont. Maybe I can catch him doing something here.
Yeah, he's up in Burlington area, I think.
Oh, cool.
He married someone from the States.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. And I'm not
So
sure.
it was useful in any way,
Uh,
or rather than
Yeah, just
Sure.
running through it. It's just, yeah. I mean, I'd like to carry on exploring more if, perhaps sort of less focused on this project, but I just wanted to bring this in as a kind of almost extreme example of, how the thinking that's going on in places, around. Because I mean, there's some wonderful, the people I'm working with are fantastic experts. There's this woman yesterday I was talking with. She's there's an organization called Plant Life, and she is just encyclopedic about all sorts of plants, but particularly arable plants, and she gets incredibly excited about these tiny little things that, would have been around, until industrialized agriculture came along and started really over fertilizing the soil and disturbing it more than it needs to be. But it's incredible just hearing the detail there. But again, it's that, I'm not really picking up how it fits into the bigger stuff from her. It's a siloed expert,
Right.
great,
That's
but
the
how do you manage these sorts of people with that enthusiasm and energy and expertise in a way? Yeah, how do you bring them?
how do you well, the big opportunity for me is how can how can you kind of turn this into some sort of larger scale planning opportunity, right? Because that has the potential, and then you apply an integrative and regenerative kind of process to that planning process. And that's where the opportunity comes in to bring in all those unique perspectives.
Yeah.
And I think, the other end too, right, is in the evaluating, if there's all these perspectives, right, that helps you build the field that maybe then feeds into, right, the trying to develop some impetus for generating the planning.
Mm.
Yeah, and I really loved what Marcus said. I mean, it was such a big aha for me when I took my first systems thinking class, because I mean, now I mostly teach writers, especially screenwriters, about living systems processes, which is why I loved when I saw that in Carol's book again recently, because just that shift in thinking, I think, starts to really connect people outside their silos, right? If they see it as a process and not like I do this, right?
Yeah, it's how do you get people out of siloed thinking?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where, common direction, you know, understanding a common third line, that's where reconciling energy comes in, right? All these things that we use a lot of these frameworks for, right, are ways to have those kinds of conversations among siloed, right, stakeholders.
And it's not always easy. I mean, well, the thing is
Well,
so much comes back to time as well,
Yeah.
because you need the time to develop that relationship where you can share that. Why are you doing this? How did you get into doing this? And if you get some of that background, you get that sense there, a little bit of their essence, maybe in ways that you can perhaps, work with.
The area that you're describing, right, I know it's, it's like a designated area in England. And so the, is there any sort of like governance associated with that, or body that, like, not in charge of it, or I don't know. What's the human
No.
relationship to that
Okay.
designated area, and what are the
It's
groups involved in that?
Yeah, it's purely landscape, designated landscape area. So we are the only body
So
that covers that.
there are
Um,
requirements in there that might not be outside of there
yeah,
for,
yeah, and
right. So
and
there are
we deal
restrictions
with
and, right.
all sorts of 7 different councils, county
Right.
councils and district councils.
So who
So
comes up with
we
the
have a
rules
council.
for those restrictions?
Sorry.
Who comes up with the rules for those restrictions?
It's a government thing, that we have to have a council of partners who are and all the county councils have to be represented
Right.
because it's all overlap. We overlap so many different
Right.
groups and organizations. In a way, that is a huge potential.
Yeah.
To focus people, say, well, part of your area is, you know, is in this special landscape. Some take it more seriously than others, though.
Of course.
You know, for some, it's just, oh, it's another thing they have to think about.
Where's the systemic nodal intervention point? That's the question. I know nothing about this, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm also thinking, you know, you just described, I'm thinking the same thing, where's the nodal intervention point? But I also am aware that you just described you've spent a lot of time learning the flow of finances. And how can learning that really like help you understand the flow of power within the system? Or, you know, so in thinking about that nodal intervention point, like where are the points of, like, you know, the people who could release funds, and who of them could really kind of get your systems thinking perspective and be maybe an advocate, or like the build, or a couple people, and start to really build a maybe small guild, if not a community, around people who are excited and see the potential and could, you know, be supportive. So it's not just you kind of going like, this is not generative.
Who's the nodal intervention partner
Yeah.
within the nodal intervention, right?
Yeah.
Or partners. I always like to
Okay.
think of it as like a
Sure.
guild of a couple, at least.
More the merrier.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, well, I say it's hard to get away from the land ownership sort of concept on this, a lot of this. I mean, there's a lot of big farms, there's a lot of private estates.
Are they putting in their money though? They're not putting in the money, right?
They are, the partners in this program have to make some sort of financial contribution.
Oh, okay.
But it's relatively small. It's relatively small. Yeah, that's what they try. I mean, the government's like match funding. You know, it shows somehow that everyone's got a share in the outcomes.
So the funding goes to people that already have large estates and can afford to do this. It sounds like.
Yeah.
That sounds really
yeah, there's a whole.
That sounds like England. Yeah, that sounds like how England works. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've adopted that over here too. Yeah.
The common land, you know, is a classic example. Is it's been in the family for about 500 years.
Right.
Wow.
It's common, and it's. I mean, the common is so it's public access, so that's a bit different in that sense. But you know, the current generation, he has decided, whereas previous generations have just neglected it, he's actually decided he wants to do something about it. So he is putting quite a lot of effort and energy, but I mean, there's still always looking for the funding to be able to do the physical work. But you know, he's a willing partner in that sense, and in a way, that's what that's what we have to do. You know, whoever's willing, it's habitat's habitat. You know.
Yeah. When we were there in January, we on our way back to London, we spent some time at Nep Estates.
Oh yeah.
They're doing a lot of really cool work there.
Yeah. But you know, it's all but the thing about the NEP is, and this is, maybe we can come into it next time, because they're the poster child really of this.
Yeah. With the big books and everything.
Movement. Yeah. It's because it's a pioneer. I think, you know, you can't, it's not a model that others can follow.
Right. Can just go ahead and adopt.
Because otherwise, you know, everyone in the state's going to have, you know, tours around, and they're going to do this, and they're going to, you know, it's, you can only take so many of those. But yeah, the NEP came about, wasn't it? Because the land got so depleted, they realized they just couldn't carry on. So they had to look at some other way. So, you know, it's the classic example, isn't it? You know, hit the buffers and then you change. Yeah. Anyway.
Mother of necessity is invention. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Let's hope we don't have to do that for the whole world. So
One
thanks, guys.
thing, one thing, good thing about stepping out of the do good paradigm is you can have strange bedfellows.
Mm. Yeah, well, yeah, in a sense that people you wouldn't normally possibly be, if you've
Right.
got that focused view, this is what we're doing,
Yeah.
all sorts come out of the woodwork, I guess. So yeah, that's a good point. That's another, maybe that's ever so slightly interim regenerative do good.
Yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, I'm definitely thinking about that in terms of America right now, where we've gotten so politically siloed, and yet I have family in Colorado who've been ranchers for years who have a deep love for their land, right? So I do think there's real potential in common ground around place, but it might
Yeah,
politically seem like insurmountable right now here, but that might not be as relevant to you. But just in terms of, a wealthy family, lordship, but they are really interested in potentially understanding how to systemically change. I would be like, go for it.
yeah, there are some. I'm not sure he is so much. He's still a banker or something, or I don't know. But there are other estates that, interestingly enough, there's some very wealthy people who have bought estates up and are doing lots of stuff. And they don't have to make it financially stack up,
Right.
or at least be sort of cost neutral. And there are a couple of estates where there's one in Scotland, I can think of one in North England, where they really are actually almost looking to try and transition ownership and governance to
Wow.
people to share land around. Yeah. So I think there's a few, but it's a real, it's such an entrenched, you know, it's been in my family for generations. I don't want to be the one who messes it up kind of thing. Um, but also just a final point on the land ownership and the deep love of land. I think there's a dark shadow side to that as well, potentially, of others coming in, not being welcome. We understand this land. This is ours. What are
Unwillingness to
you doing
share,
coming
right?
in,
Or to, yeah.
changing this? Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Good point.
yeah.
Well,
Which I
the whole
think we're
private
getting into
property
the
thing is a whole nother discussion.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
thank you both.
All right.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's great, and I think it feels like perhaps we could carry on with this in a more general way, and certainly
Wanna bring it
explore
again?
your
Feel
interims.
free. Yeah.
I'm on holiday for a couple of weeks now, so
No worries.
yeah. Okay.
All right. Thanks for bringing
All
it,
righty.
Tony.
You will.
Thanks.
Take
Thanks.
care.